She turned the corner of the long marble hallway and paused at the top of the staircase, her hand resting on the polished wooden railing. Her dress was simple, a navy sheath that had seen better days, the slight fraying at the hem barely noticeable beneath her coat. In her purse lay a small card embossed with her son's name in elegant script, a reminder that she had arrived too early. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and the faint metallic tang of anticipation. She smoothed the fabric at her waist and took a breath, steadying herself before stepping onto the vast expanse of polished concrete that made up the school auditorium. Rows of folding chairs stretched before her, each one occupied by proud families and glittering cameras. She felt the familiar ache in her chest. She was alone. She walked slowly down the aisle, each footstep soft against the tiled floor. She glanced at the faces turned toward the stage. Parents clutching programs, grandparents wiping away tears, siblings snapping pictures. She wondered how many of those flowers in their hands were for mothers and fathers who had driven across town, who had carved afternoons out of their busy schedules, who had smoothed their own dresses and pressed their own shirts. She wondered how many of them knew the quiet strength it took to do what she had done, to raise her son on her own when his father had walked away, to work 2 jobs while studying at night, to fill every empty hour with homework help, bedtime, stories, and whispered encouragements. This graduation was not just her son's milestone, it was hers too. She spotted an empty chair halfway down the aisle and slid into it, careful not to disturb the woman on her left. The woman glanced at her, offered a polite nod, then returned her attention to the stage. She unfolded the program in her lap, her fingers tracing the small print that listed each graduate's name. At the bottom of the page was a dedication, a quote chosen by the senior class. "Success is not measured by what you accomplish, but by the obstacles you overcome." She closed her eyes for a moment, the words sinking into her heart. She had overcome so much. And still, she sat alone. A hush fell over the audience as the principal took the podium, adjusting the microphone. The woman straightened in her seat, her heart thumping like a drum. She listened as the principal spoke of perseverance, community, and the promise of tomorrow. She glanced at the stage lights, so bright they made the audience blur into shadows. She thought of her son, quiet, thoughtful, reserved, sitting somewhere up there with his classmates. He had always been so careful to follow the rules, so eager to please. He had called her earlier, voice tight with nerves, asking if she was coming. She had promised. Nothing would keep her away. As the names were called, applause rippled through, the room like waves. One by one, the students rose, walked across the stage, shook the principal's hand, and accepted their diplomas. She watched her neighbors, couples, families of 4, clusters of friends, clap each graduate's name with enthusiasm. She realized then how painfully visible her solitude was. She reached into her purse and pulled out the little card, folding it 3 times before placing it back inside. She told herself it didn't matter. She had fought for this day. She had sacrificed for this day. She deserved to be here as much as anyone. Midway through the ceremony, a flash of recognition flickered across her mind. She had brought a gift for her son, a small leather-bound journal with his initials embossed in gold. She had placed it on the seat next to her, but when she opened her purse, it was gone. Panic fluttered in her chest. She rummaged through the bottom of the purse, her fingers brushing against tissues, receipts, her keys. No journal. She pressed her hand to her forehead. How could she have lost it? She imagined her son's crestfallen face. She imagined him standing on stage, diploma in hand, her gift left behind. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears, determined not to let despair ruin this moment. Almost on cue, the principal announced the next name. The auditorium lights dimmed further as the student walked confidently to the stage. The woman took a quiet breath and turned back to the aisle, preparing to slip out and retrieve her gift from the car. But then she heard it, a soft hum that grew steadily louder. She looked around, confusion knitting her brow. The hum became a chant, a rhythm that pulsed through the room. Stand up for her. The first student to rise was the boy who had just received his diploma. He stood, program clutched to his chest, eyes fixed on something behind her. Then another graduate stood, and another. One by one, the students in caps and gowns rose to their feet. The auditorium erupted in cheers as they raised their hands high, forming a chorus of standing silhouettes against the bright stage lights. She froze, stunned. All at once, every student in the senior class stood, turned toward her, and began applauding. The room fell silent in awe. Her breath caught in her throat. She felt the world tilt, each clap reverberating against her ribcage like thunder. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized who they were standing for. Her. Not for the gift she had lost, not for the dress she wore, for her story, her battles, her triumphs, her unwavering love for her son. The audience, moved by the gesture, joined in the standing ovation. Cameras flashed, phones were raised, and her peers murmured, "Look at her. She deserves this. What a beautiful moment." She sat frozen, her hand pressed against her heart. She could no longer hold back the flood of emotions. Quiet, tears slipped down her cheeks as she rose slowly to her feet, each movement heavy with gratitude and disbelief. She brushed a trembling hand across her face and allowed herself to smile, a small, radiant curve of lips that spoke volumes. The students continued to clap, their faces shining with collective pride and respect. She felt her legs weaken, her knees almost buckling beneath her. But she remained standing, anchored by the love emanating from the room. Somewhere in the back, her sister cried out her name, and she saw a cluster of familiar faces, old friends, neighbors, distant relatives, rising to applaud alongside the crowd. She spotted her best friend wiping her eyes, her own small daughter clapping vigorously. It felt as though the entire world had turned its gaze toward her, honoring her for every midnight spent studying, every shift worked, every tear shed in silence. She thought of her son's laughter as a child, his shy grin when he finally mastered riding his bike, the proud look in his eyes when he earned his first A. And she thought of the first time he had called her mom instead of mommy, the moment she knew her love had become his anchor. The applause continued until she felt the heat of embarrassment mingle with joy. She raised a hand to quiet the noise, her voice breaking as she spoke into the microphone the principal handed her. "Thank you," she said, her words wobbly but strong. "Thank you all. This means more than you can imagine." She paused, swallowing hard. The microphone crackled with feedback. "I am so proud of my son, and I am so grateful to stand here with you today, even though I never imagined I would be the one recognized." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "I lost the gift I had for him," she continued, managing a wry smile. "But I gained something I'll never forget. The knowledge that this community sees me and stands with me." The audience roared in approval. She stepped back, letting the principal take the microphone once more. She sat slowly, wiping her cheeks with the edge of her sleeve. The students returned to their seats, but the energy in the room had shifted irrevocably. The ceremony resumed, but every name called afterward carried the echo of what had just happened. Solidarity, compassion, recognition of unseen struggles. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur for her, each clap a reminder that she was not alone. After the ceremony, the hallways buzzed with chatter and congratulations. She lingered in the exit corridor, watching groups of families reunite graduates, with flowers and balloons. She spotted her son, diploma in hand, standing with his friends at the top of the stairs. His eyes sought her out immediately, and when they met, his face broke into a triumphant smile. He dashed down the steps and threw his arms around her, his cap tumbling to the floor. She hugged him back fiercely, pressing her cheek against his. "Mortarboard, they did that for you," she whispered into his ear, her voice thick. He pulled back, his eyes shining with tears. "No," he said firmly. "They did that for you, Mom." He reached into his own robe pocket and pulled out a small parcel. He handed it to her. Inside was the leather-bound journal she had bought, its corners slightly scuffed from being jostled. He had kept it safe. She opened it, her hand trembling as she read the first page, where he had written, "To my mom, my hero. Thank you for never giving up on me." She closed the journal and hugged him again. Around them, the crowd seemed to swell, friends and strangers offering hugs and congratulations. She walked with her son toward the parking lot, the evening sun painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. She held his hand, her own gift clutched in hers, and felt as though she was graduating too. From every doubt, every fear, every lonely moment. She had arrived alone, but she left surrounded by love. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, the journal open before her. The house was quiet, but she could still hear the echo of applause in her mind. She turned the pages slowly, reading her son's words of gratitude and hope. She realized that the true measure of a mother's success was not just the milestones her child reached, but the moments when the world recognized her worth too. She closed her eyes and smiled, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows on the walls. She whispered into the silence, "We did it." And in her heart, she knew it was only the beginning of a new chapter.